mute. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Janice, and it's a real pleasure to have over 40 people attend this 5th virtual tour of European cities run by Maccabi GB. We are delighted that this morning's tour will again be with our tour guide actually out and about, walking around the Jewish sites of Prague. I would just like to tell you a few house rules for this morning. We will be muting you all during the tour. Please put your screens on active speaker view. It will enable you to see the whole screen. We will be recording this tour and will send a link out afterwards. If you have any questions that you would like to ask during the tour or need any assistance, please put a message in the chat box and a member of the Maccabi GB team will be able to help you. There will be time at the end of the tour for our tour guide to answer all questions. Before we start, I'd like to introduce you to Danny Rothstein, founder of Jewish Mallorca. Danny has run over 50 successful events promoting diversity and inclusion in the small yet growing Jewish community of Mallorca. Danny's company has been recommended to us and has been very helpful in finding live tour guides for all of us to use for our walking tour events. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. And Janice, thank you so much for having us here with you today. And Candice and everyone at Maccabi GB. This is such an exciting opportunity to get to connect with all of you. As you can tell, I don't have a very Spanish accent. I'm originally from New Jersey in the United States, but I call Mallorca home. And I actually wanted to start with that. I was wondering if everyone could go to the chat box. If you look at your screen and on the bottom there, it says chat, click on that button and then go to the part where it says everyone so we can all start to meet and greet one another. Please put your name, if you're comfortable, putting where you're from originally, where you live now, and also if you've ever been to Prague, all right? We'd love to know the connections that come about from this lovely walking tour. And I'm gonna introduce our tour guide today who's actually in Prague. She's on the streets and she's gonna walk around with us today. And we love getting to have that connection. As you can see behind me, I'm a founder and owner of Jewish Mallorca. We do hot air Zoom balloon every Thursday. So if you enjoy these walking tours, if you enjoy virtual connecting, please look us up and we can't wait to connect with you all later today. So we're looking to see everyone at the chat. And as we're putting in and connecting, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about our guide today. Her name is Lucy and she is native Czech. She studied at the Prague University of Economics and she worked 3 years as an economist, but her passion was actually always in history, architecture, art, traveling, and meeting other people and learning about their cultures, sharing these wonderful experiences. So she followed her passion, and since 1997, she's been working as a tour guide and is now actually a licensed tour guide in the Czech Republic, as well as at the Prague Jewish Museum. She established her family business known as Lucy Tours, where she specializes in private tours in and around Prague. And she would love to meet you in person one day. But for now, we're going to meet each other virtually. So I can't wait to go on this wonderful walking tour with you, Lucy. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Danny. Ladies and gentlemen, hello, welcome to Prague. Welcome to Jewish Quarter of Prague. And my pleasure will be to show you all sites in Jewish Quarter, which is one of the main highlights of Prague. And Mariano, if we can show the map, let's show the map where we are going. We are now in front of Spanish temple, and we will see on our tour, we will walk in the Jewish Quarter and in the Old Town, and we will see 6 temples. Spanish temple, we will see also inside, other temples from outside. Then we will see Old Jewish Cemetery and Jewish City Hall. So you can see on the map our route, and we will finish our tour in the middle of Old Town, in the heart of Prague at Old Town Square. So now I would like to show you where we are. So let's start. This is Spanish synagogue. Jews came to Prague in the 10th century. So that's the beginning of Prague. And in the 11th century, Jewish community, which came from Byzantine Empire, built on this spot temple called Alt Shul. So Eastern Jewish community lived here, and here there is a church. So Christians here, this is the Church of Holy Spirit. And further on, where we will walk in a few minutes, Ashkenazi Jewish community settled down in the 13th century. So these two Jewish communities lived separately for many centuries. They assimilated together in the 19th century. Altschul was active synagogue, and in the 19th century, Reform Judaism started, and more people wanted to enter the temple, but Altschul was rather small, so they rebuilt it, but it wasn't enough. So in 1869, Prague Jewish community built this magnificent temple called Spanish because they were inspired in synagogue, which is in Alhambra in Spain. And inside it's Moorish, which you will see in a moment. This is active temple. It's used by organization Beit Praha, Beit Prague, for liberal services. And also it's part of Jewish Museum. Jewish Museum was established in 1906, and it shows the history of Prague Jewish community from Joseph II, it means end of 18th century up to World War II. And in the second half of the 19th century, when in fact ghetto finished in 1849, and when Jewish people got full equality, Jewish people became pioneers in all kinds of human activities. If you will come to Prague, definitely you must get as a souvenir some crystal. And Ludwig Moser, he founded the crystal factory Moser. Emil Kolben, he was electrician and electrotechnician, and he electrified Czech railways. So these important personalities, Joseph Hartmut, you know, he founded a factory manufacturing pencils. This factory exists up to nowadays. So all these stories about these important personalities, that's inside. Also inside the synagogue, there are concerts. But let's see, now we are facing statue of one of the most influential writers, Prague Jewish writers, Franz Kafka, who was born in the neighborhood in the Old Town, and the whole life he lived in the Old Town and in Jewish Quarter. And this statue symbolizes very complicated spirit of Franz Kafka. One of his stories is called History or Description of the Fight. The weaker sits on the shoulders of the stronger, and he controls him. That's him, Franz Kafka. He considered himself as weaker. He was introvert. His father wanted him to run a shop, but he was different. And he said, I pray through literature. And one of his most famous novels is Metamorphosis. As you can see here, there is a cockroach. This novel is about the man in depression who converts into a cockroach. Usually his books has a tragic end. He became very popular after World War II because of his perfect description of different life situations. Let's have a look inside Spanish temple. It's very beautiful. It's Moorish. Dobrý den. Není, je to pro mý přátelé. Je to pro mý přátelé. Byla jsem budu tam 2 minuty. Ne, děkuju moc krát. Díky. So I got permission. So ladies and gentlemen, this temple was built in 1869 by the architect Ullmann. Moorish, there is the organ. The organist was František Škroub. He composed Czech national anthem. He was one of the organists in this temple. There are concerts of Gershwin, there are wedding, and there are services, and also it's part of Jewish Museum. So as you can see in this temple, in fact, we see assimilation in the 19th century. In other synagogues, bema is in the middle and men sitting around. Here, men are sitting in front of the ark, and also organ in the temple, which is unusual, and the balcony for gallery for women, because it's early Reform synagogue. During World War II, this synagogue was a storage of school benches. After World War II, it was closed for many, many years, and it was restored after 2000 and reopened. Děkuji moc. So we will go through the Jewish quarter. Jewish merchants coming to Prague had the same rights as Roman merchants, Germanic merchants, Frankish merchants. And the first Jewish settlement was below the castle and in the new town. The situation changed in the 13th century. In 1215, the Pope Innocent III, you know, the whole Europe was Christianized, and Innocent III in 1215, he said, who wasn't Christian in Europe had to wear a badge. And this badge was in fact valid in the whole Europe. And local king Přemysl Otakar II issued privileges for the Jews in 1254. These privileges meant freedom to practice religion. Přemysl Otakar II gave Jewish community this part of the old town to settle down, and Jewish people became servants of the king. So the king protected Jews, and for protection he collected high taxes. So the life of Jewish community depended on the king. If there was a strong king and the weak church, here Catholic Church, it was a good time for Prague and for Czech Jewish community. And such very good time was 16th century, this Renaissance, when Prague Jewish community was the largest in Europe. 25% of Prague people were Jewish. Jewish community at that time had 11,000 people. Also many scholars came and doctors and alchemists at that time in the 16th century. When the church was strong and the king was weak, that was a bad time for Jewish community, and they were pogroms, usually fanatic Christian priests started these attacks of Christians on Jewish quarters. What you can see here, this is Paris Street, because ghetto finished in 1849. What did it mean, ghetto? Wealthy Jews could live wherever they wanted. Others, poor Jewish people, had to live in this part of the town. Joseph II, in 1780s, he started emancipation. He started separation of the church and the state. He opened a royal academy for Jews. Jewish people had very good yeshiva. Prague yeshiva was known in the whole Central Europe. And he issued a law of freedom of religion. But he didn't abolish ghetto. Ghetto was abolished in 1849. So that's the year when Jewish people got full emancipation. Who had money in the 19th century moved out of ghetto. Who didn't, Jews which didn't have money, stayed. Other poor people, new labor coming to Prague, settled down. So Josefov was poor section, poor district in 1900s. And that's why city planners were afraid of the floods because we are near the Vltava River, and they were afraid of epidemics because there was no sewage system. So they decided to demolish 400 houses in Prague. Many houses, in fact, almost all houses in Jewish quarter, and they built these residential houses in so-called copy of historical styles. Like this is Art Nouveau, 1907. So this modernization of Jewish quarter and Old Town happened within the years 1890 up to 1917. Organization Club for Old Prague was founded, and they were against that modernization. They were saying, we are demolishing, we are destroying historical and cultural heritage. And thanks to these voices, 6 synagogues survived, Old Jewish Cemetery and Jewish City Hall. It is unique in Europe what survived, and it's one of the main highlights of Prague. We are now looking at very unique temple. It's called Old New Temple, built in 1270. So it's Gothic, 13th century. It's one of the oldest active temples in the world. It's active, it's Orthodox. You can see interior. It's all original. And the street next to it, that's one street, Červená, which means red, which survived from original ghetto. In the 16th century, Yehuda Liva ben Bezalel, Rabbi Lev, Maharal, he was a very significant scholar. He introduced new methods of teaching and learning. He introduced connection, that we must connect life, studying with practical life. And according to the legend, he was, this is a fact that he lived in Prague and he was a rabbi of this temple. But according to the legend, he created artificial man from clay called golem. And he mixed Hebrew letters to make golem live, to protect Jewish community during pogroms. And when it wasn't necessary, really golem helped. There are different versions of this golem, yes. And when it wasn't necessary anymore, he took the shell out of golem's mouth, and the legend says golem sleeps in the roof of this temple, and there are stairs going down, so that if someone will find this magic word, golem, the name of the god. What's the name of the god? Yes, golem will go out and he will follow his Lord. Jewish people in the beginning, like from 10, if we are talking about really early Middle Ages, they spoke Czech and they used Hebrew for religious purpose. And thanks to Jewish scholars, we know how Czech language looked like in the early Middle Ages, because in the monasteries, they used Latin, and also, of course, in universities, in University Prague, Charles University, Royal University, Latin. So thanks to Jewish scholars, we know how Czech language, local language, looked like in early beginning. Later on, there was Germanization of Czech lands because of Habsburgs. Habsburgs' last dynasty, they ruled from the 16th century up to 1918. So Czechia, Moravia, Bohemia, Moravia were part of Austria-Hungarian Empire, and there was Germanization. So school language was German, and especially Joseph II, who started emancipation, he ordered that German will be used as main school official language. So many Jewish families which used Hebrew family names, Hebrew names, they chose names of the towns where they lived, and they became Rosenbergs, Horowitz, you know, Landstein, Brandeis. So these are names in Czech Republic, in Czechia, names of towns in German. Yeah? This is a coat of arms, crest of Prague Jewish community. So this is the entrance to Old New Schule, Altneu Schule. And in 1900s, so Franz Kafka lived during this modernization. Every community, because in 1900s in Prague, they were Germans, they were Czechs, and they were Jews. And each of these communities, they were searching for their identity. So that's why, in fact, the street we crossed is called Paris, because there was a French influence, some neutral, yes. They used French names so that everyone will be happy. And there was Jewish assimilation, German Jewish assimilation, like Franz Kafka, he wrote in German, and 50% of Prague Jews, they assimilated with like Czech. So they were writers who wrote in Czech language, revival of Czech language. This is 19th century. And also intelligence and students started Zionist movement, and there was a Zionist Congress in Prague in in the beginning of the 20th century. But we are now facing the Jewish city hall. Prague was divided into independent towns. On this side, we are now on the right side of the Vltava River. And on this side, there are 3 towns. Jewish town, yes. So in the 16th century, Rudolf II allowed Mordechai Meisel, he was a businessman, very successful European businessman, and he became so-called God Jew. He became advisor of Rudolf II, and he could build his private temple, which we will see, and he built the city hall, and he became the first mayor. We see the clock with Hebrew dial, and at the top there is a clock with Roman dial. This is still the office of the main rabbinate, and Mordechai Meisel, he was a big donor of Jewish quarter. He built stone roads. He built this high temple, which you can see next to the city hall. He built the hospital. He built the home for poor. He built his own synagogue. He built Clausen synagogue. So he was a big donor of Jewish town. This is luxury living here in these residential homes. Average apartment has 4 rooms. It's like from 150 to 200 square meters. Like this one, it's Art Nouveau, built in 1911. Electrical lift. So imagine 1911 with the elevator. Then kitchen, the room for the maid, balcony. And here you can see that the first buyers, because after restoration, the Jews came back, Christians came back. Now who has money can live here, yes. We see that Star of David, he was a banker. Above him, they were newly married couple, tennis player, the knight, yes. So they put the first buyers, the first owners, they put their portraits above the window. And we will now see Old Jewish Cemetery. Jewish community nowadays in Prague has 1,500 members. There are 3 active synagogues in Prague, Old New, Spanish, and Jerusalem in the new town. Thanks to the Voices, synagogues survived, and also Jewish Museum was founded to save precious Judaicas and precious temple objects, because Jews moved to the other sections of Prague, and they built synagogues in different districts of Prague, and synagogues in Jewish quarter became empty. So that's why Jewish Museum was founded. And by the way, Jewish Museum, when you will be in Prague, definitely visit Prague Jewish Museum. This museum has the largest collections of curtains, Torahs, synagogue textile after Jerusalem. Also manuscripts. The oldest manuscript is from 1347. There was very good painting school in Prague and in southern Moravia. So above the wall, behind the wall, there are 12,000 visible tombstones. First Jewish cemetery, older, that was in the new town. And here, the first, in fact, the oldest tombstone that was found is the tombstone of Avigdor Kara, scholar, rabbi. He died in 1439. So this cemetery was used for 350 years from the 15th century to Joseph II. Joseph II, because of hygiene reasons, he moved cemeteries, he closed all cemeteries in the city center, and he started new cemeteries outside the city. The white building, this is Clausen Synagogue, this is Baroque. Of course, Jewish community wanted to have temple according to the fashion style. This synagogue was built in 1679 on the spot of 3 small buildings, which were built by Mordechai Meisel. One was the temple, one was ritual bath, and one was a hospital and house for poor. Clausen Synagogue is part of Jewish Museum, showing customs, traditions, holidays. And this is ceremonial hall. It looks like a castle and it looks old. In fact, this is a copy of original house, which looked similar. This is a copy built in the 19th century in 1850. And originally there was a house of so-called Chevra Kadisha, Burial Brothers Society, which was founded, this organization was founded in Prague in the end of 16th century as one of the first organizations of this type in Europe. And nowadays this museum shows the what Burial Brothers Society did. So all the ritual washing and praying, preparing the dead body for the burial. And we go a little bit upstairs to have a view of the cemetery. Because of no space, in some places, they are up to 12 layers on top of each other. Approximately 100,000 people are buried in this cemetery. It's one of the most remarkable European Jewish cemeteries in the middle of the town. The older tombstones are from sandstone, the younger from marble. And it's written, you know, many rabbis, also Mordechai Meisel is buried in this cemetery. Maharal, Rabbi Lev, so lots of scholars, also astronomer David Gans, he was also historian and geographer. It's part, when you get ticket, when you will be in Prague to the museum, then 5 objects, 5 temples and cemetery goes into 1 ticket. And then separate ticket is to Old New Synagogue. So we are walking around the wall of the cemetery. So you can see these residential houses and apartments. And we will see Pinkas Temple, which became in 1959 memorial of the Holocaust. Nazis, after Munich Pact, which was on 30 September 1938, Chamberlain, Mussolini, and Daladier gave Hitler Sudetenland, 1/3 of Czechoslovakia, where many Czech ethnic Germans lived. And later on, 15th of March, 1939, Hitler took it all. There was no fight. Local president, President Benesch, decided to exile to London, not to fight, because at that time in 1939, nobody wanted to be involved. And in Great Britain, with the help of Winston Churchill, with the help of British government, Czechoslovak paratroopers were trained to kill the Satan and the devil, the main Nazi here, who was called Reinhard Heydrich. Assassination happened on 27th of May, 1942 in Prague. This is Faculty of Law, part of Charles University. And we are walking on the street of 17th November. On 17th November, 1939, Nazis closed Czech universities because there was a demonstration of, there was a big resistance during the war. Czechs couldn't fight at home, so many of them left to fight against fascism abroad. And on 17th November, also many Czech students were killed and sent to concentration camps. And that's why 17th of November is called International Day of Students. And on that day, on 17th November 1989, Velvet Revolution started in this country, which was the end of communist regime. Communists got to power after World War II in 1948. And we had communist regime 41 years until 1989. This is a little window. We can have a look at the cemetery. Franz Kafka is buried in another cemetery. Yes, there is a cemetery in more at the outskirts. This is a concert hall, Rudolfinum. And on the left, that's Art Decorative Museum. So all these buildings, this is the result of the modernization of the city. '80s, it's called Rudolfinum after Crown Prince Rudolf, who was son of Franz Joseph and who committed suicide in Mayerling with his lover, but he visited Prague several times. And then Franz Joseph chose his nephew, Franz Ferdinand, who was killed in Sarajevo in 1914. And that's the beginning of World War I. And that's the end of Austria-Hungarian Empire. And the result of the end of Austria-Hungarian Empire is establishment of Czechoslovakia in 1918, with the first Czechoslovak president, Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk. And when Franz Kafka lived, because here, Prague Jewish community was really, there was a big assimilation. Prague was the western city of Austria-Hungarian Empire. And in 1900s, when Russia, because Galicia was also part of Austria-Hungarian Empire, Lvov, very important Jewish community there, in Galicia, in Poland, in Ukraine. And when during Kafka's time, 30,000 of Galician Jewish people escaped from Galicia, coming to Prague. And they were so shocked how local Jewish people are unbelievers. For them, Prague Jewish people were unbelievers. They were very religious. They were also, most of them, very poor, 30,000. And local Jewish community helped them to find job, really to find a living, yes. And also, in fact, Franz Kafka was watching these events, and he started to learn Hebrew. He thought probably because the whole life he was searching for sense of life, and so he started to visit synagogue. He wasn't very religious when he had to visit synagogue with his father. He was as a child quite. It didn't tell him anything, but with these Galician Jewish people, he really started to visit services, and also he dreamed about Palestine, probably to go to Palestine as his dream country. He didn't make it. Franz Kafka died in 1924 because of tuberculosis. We are facing, this is the bust of Jan Palach. You know, that's event which happened here in 1968 when local communists, they introduced socialism with human face. Alexander Dubček, he was communist, but he was reformed communist. He wanted to open the border, to let people travel. We were like in prison here during communist time. And he also abolished censorship, but Moscow leadership didn't like that, and Soviets sent tanks. Tanks arrived to Prague in August, so in a month we will have anniversary. In 1968, Soviet tanks invaded Czechoslovakia to stop this revolution, also Warsaw Pact, but mostly Soviet tanks. And we had communism for another 20 years until 1989. But ladies and gentlemen, here you can see the whole castle. So the Vltava River, and on the other side, there is the castle. By the way, that's the largest castle in the world, castle complex, town in the middle, St. Vitus Cathedral. And below the castle, that section is called Little Quarter. And that hill is called Petrin Hill, with a younger sister of Eiffel Tower. And this is Academy of Music and Art. This is philosophical faculty, by the way, 1920s. And we go back to Jewish Quarter and we will see Pinkas Synagogue, built in 1500s by Horowitz family. Horowitz family was one of the very influential families in Prague. Also, one of the Horowitz lady, they were also mayors, yes, and wives of the mayors. Later on, the Rabbi Pinkas and Pinkas family owned this temple. And in 1959, it became Memorial of Holocaust. This devil, Reinhard Heydrich, who was the third in the Reich, Hitler, Himmler, Heydrich. He was one of the main architects of the Holocaust. And on 20th January 1942, there was a conference in Wannsee where Nazis counted Jewish people in Europe, and they made tragic, unbelievable, tragic plan to kill 11 million European Jews. And in Bohemia and Moravia, 100,000 Jewish people lived in 1942. 19,000 Jewish people managed to exile before 1942, and Heydrich converted former military town Terezín into a concentration camp and ghetto for the Jews. And 63 trains. That was transit place. There were trains going in and trains going out, and 63 trains left Terezín to extermination camps built in the east, in Poland, mostly. When Auschwitz-Birkenau was built in 1943, all these trains went to Auschwitz-Birkenau. More than 78,000 Czech Jewish people perished in Holocaust, and all these names from Bohemia, Moravia, not Slovakia. Yes, Slovakia was separate state during the war, and Slovakia has around 60,000 victims of Holocaust. Inside the name's first name, the second name, date of birth, and the date of deportation, and also it's written there, the place where these people lived in Bohemia or Moravia. On the first floor of this temple, there are children drawings, which Friedel Dicker Brandeis saved in her suitcase. Friedel Dicker Brandeis, she was Austrian. She was architect. In Terezín, she looked after children. She led lessons of art. And she was transported to Auschwitz with the last transport, which was on 28th October 1944. And she hid her suitcase in Dresden barracks in Terezín with 4,500 children drawings. And some of them are exhibited in Pinka Synagogue. Very emotional, very moving. Probably you know the book, I Haven't Seen a Butterfly, the book of children drawings. Also in that book, you can see a drawing of Helga Weiss. Helga Weiss, she survived, she became illustrator, and this lady, she lives in Prague, Helga Weiss, 91 years old lady, and up to really recently, she gave lectures in Jewish Museum, and she illustrated many books. We are in Meisel Street, which is called after Mordechai Meisel. And we will see his private, which was originally his private temple, Meisel Temple, built in the 16th century. Mordechai Meisel didn't have children. And Rudolf II promised him, he got also, that was the time when some Jewish families got like a decree of nobility, which meant that they could, with decree of nobility, children could inherit the property. And Rudolf II promised Mordechai Meisel that, in fact, this property will be forever of Meisel family, in the hands of Meisel family. But when Mordechai Meisel died, in fact, Rudolf II confiscated all the property of Meisel family. This temple became a museum in 1906. It was restored recently, and inside there are precious things, and also Langweil model of Prague. A bookkeeper, Langweil, he was bookkeeper in Clementinum in National Library, and in 1830s he made a paper model. By the way, this is a golem. Restaurant at Golem. He made paper model of Prague, very detailed paper model. And in this temple, this paper model is digitalized. And thanks to this model, we can see how original Jewish quarter looked like. But what survived is a plan of the streets. So yes, but it's also very interesting. If you like, you can Google it, Langweil model, and you will see this digitalized model on YouTube, for instance. You can find it. So we are now going towards Old Town Square, and we will see the birthplace of Franz Kafka. Franz Kafka changed his living very often. His family, as his father was successful shopkeeper, and he was from the village. His father was from a Czech Jewish background, but they spoke German in the family because German was considered as a language of intellectuals. And his father, as he made more progress in his business, and also he had more and more children, the family had more children, they changed their apartments very often. This is the birthplace of Franz Kafka. Here he was born in July 1883, but he was the only son in the family. So his father, Hermann Kafka, wanted him to continue the business. Other two brothers died in the childhood. From original house, the balcony survived and the main entrance. Otherwise, this is younger. This house is younger because there was a fire. So this is a square of Franz Kafka, and that's a St. Nicholas Church. And we are heading to Old Town Square. By the way, I will show you another statue here because Franz Kafka became so popular that he has another statue here, what do you think it symbolizes, this statue? Well, the reader, yes, Franz Kafka reading in a book in the armchair. And this is a new city hall. And Mariano, we can show also the spinning head of Franz Kafka, which is in the new town. When you come to Prague, definitely visit. This is David Czerny. David Czerny, work of David Czerny in the new town. This statue was built on the spot where old Jewish cemetery was found. They found it, in fact, some gravestones of very old Jewish cemetery. Nowadays, there is a shopping mall there and restaurants and office buildings. And David Czerny, temporary artist. St. Nicholas in Prague, there are two St. Nicholas churches. This is Protestant, this is Hussite. And well, we have 3 minutes. Well, I will show you, it's opened. I would like to show you one thing. I would like to show you the chandelier, because when Russians exiled from Russia in 1905, because of First Revolution, this was a Russian Orthodox church, and Tsar Nikolai II gave this church this chandelier in the form of imperial crown. In 1915, this church was given to local Protestants, which are called Hussites, followers of John Huss. And John Huss was one of the first reformers, and he has a statue in the middle of the square. He was burnt at the stake in 1415. And so that's the main plaza, that's the main square for the markets. This is the Paris Street. So we were there in Paris Street. Kinsky Palace, this rosé, By the way, Franz Kafka visited a German grammar school, and also his father had a shop in Kinsky Palace. Well, different events happened here also during communist putsch, 1948. Gottwald, who was the right hand of Stalin, had a speech from the balcony of this palace to the nation. Communist putsch was in February 1948. And so the oldest house is this one. Yes, that's 14th century, built for the royal family to relax in the town. Nowadays, it's a house which belongs to the city, and they are exhibitions. Marian column erected after 1648 as a victory to celebrate the victory against Swedish troops. No, this is the end of 30 Years' War, Catholics against Protestants. And here, there is astronomical clock, the city hall. So Prague wasn't damaged much during World War II. Prague is lucky. There was uprising in 1945, and the center of uprising was inside the city hall, and German tank was shooting at the city hall. So that's why half of the building is missing. There were different plans to finish it, but no success. And I will show you, as the last thing, ladies and gentlemen, I will show you astronomical clock. The show is every hour. So we will not see the show of apostles, but at least you will see, you must come to Prague, yes, to see it. And it's every hour, but this is the clock, yes? Built in 1410 by Master Hanus. Clock, and this street would lead to Charles Bridge. So this is the Royal Way, in fact. If we would go this way, we would come to the new town, Wenceslas Square. As you can see, restaurants are opened, and more or less life is back to normal. But as you can see, not many people. It's much more crowded otherwise. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. And I will switch now the screen for the questions, yes?
Yes, thank you so very much, Lucy. This was absolutely stunning. Feeling like we were there with you the entire time in Prague, and your knowledge is just outstanding. I'd love to open it up for questions now, and maybe to kind of get the ball rolling, as they say. I'd love for you just to spend, a minute or two telling us, why did you get so involved with the Jewish history of Prague? Where do you think this came from, Lucy, and how did that inspire you?
Danny, I was, because I am not a religious person, and I was really interested why 2000 years ago, yes, Jews came to Europe, or even, approximately, and why there was always some kind of persecution, or some kinds of, they were treated as foreign community, and so why? And so I wanted to, because I love history, and I really wanted to understand more what happened throughout these 2000 years of history in Jewish community in Europe. And it's, in fact, history is a big mosaic, and everything is connected with something, yes, it's connected. So we are bearing the rucksack of the history on our backs. So to know our past is very important, otherwise we can't change the future. So, so that's I like to really. I am interested. I love history, and we Christians and Jews. It seems to me like that's one basement. We must keep our precious history.
Great. So I thank you so much. I just want to, because there's a couple of questions coming in, how to ask questions. So one, you can send me a chat on the chat function. Two, you can raise your, real hand or virtual hand. If you go to reactions here on the bottom of the screen, you could click on raise hand, and then your hand will pop up, and we can call on you that way. But I find that this is such an opportunity to be speaking with an incredible, wonderful guy who's in Prague right now. So Stephen has a question, which is, can you tell us the history of the crucifix on the Charles Bridge with the Hebrew writing?
Yes. That happened during after 30 years war, and 30 years war. In that war, which happened in the 17th century, which, by the way, started in Prague and finished in Prague, nobody won. But this country, it divided Europe into only Catholic countries and only Protestant countries. And Bohemia, so this country was part under Habsburgs, so under Austria, we can say, and only one religion allowed. So all the Protestants had to leave, their property was confiscated, or they had to convert. Jewish people could stay because they helped the king to in fact, that they won against Swedes. They helped the king a lot. Jewish people could stay, but that was a bad time for Jewish community. Jesuits were invited, so Catholicization of the nation. That's why also there is a gallery of saints on the Charles Bridge. That was a Jesuit idea, so that people would be reminded of the saints. And one rabbi, Jesuits said that he blasphemed Jesus in his letter. They couldn't prove it because they couldn't understand what was written in the letter, but they wanted that rabbi to write on Jesus on the cross, Kadosh, 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 holy, holy, holy. Yeah? So that's what happened to show the power. The Catholic Church wanted to show who was the boss in the 17th century.
Wow, I had never heard that story before. That's yes. Really, really interesting, Lucy. Thank you. Eileen had a quick question. She was wondering if you could spell the name of the person who made the paper model.
Yes, it's L-A-N-G-W-E-I-L.
Ooh, can you spell that again? I actually wanted to type it down, but you were a little too fast for me. Go ahead.
Yes, L-A-N-G-W-E-I-L.
Got it. Languile.
Yes.
Languile. And Lucy, do you mind turning the camera around so we can see you?
That'd
be lovely.
Oh, yeah. With pleasure.
And go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, yes, I can do it. Yes.
There we are. There we go. And maybe if you turn around, then we can have that beautiful, that's what we're looking for. Look at that beautiful plaza behind you. And we get to see you. That's wonderful, Lucy. Thank you. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit. I know you said you have Jewish friends that live in Prague today. What's going on with the Jewish community today?
Oh, yes. And nowadays, really, because the Czechs are one of the most atheist nation in Europe. And 90% of Czechs are not religious. In former Catholic countries with lots of churches, only 10% of people are Catholic. So nobody would ask you what's your religion, or it's not the question who people would be interested. And that's why, in fact, this is also, I think, very, now we have democracy and it's very good country to live. And I have many Jewish friends, and also I have some Jewish heritage in my own family. And I have friends which are religious, Jewish friends which are religious, and I have Jewish friends which are not religious, and they just have Jewish heritage.
And do you know if they're meeting on a regular basis? They're celebrating
Yes,
the holidays,
like
kosher food?
Yes. Like my friend. In fact, that's why we could enter Spanish synagogue, because she is selling tickets there. This my friend Anna, and she visits regularly. Every Saturday she goes to Spanish synagogue. Yes, I think she is a member of Beit Praha, of this organization.
Actually, about this, Joyce is wondering if there is a Jewish school, and do the Jews live in a certain area?
No. Well, Orthodox Jewish people live in the neighborhood of Orthodox temple. Otherwise, we don't have a special Jewish area. It's really, everybody lives according to his pocket, let's say. And there is a Jewish kindergarten, because communists, there was anti-Semitism during communist time. Communists didn't like any religion, and but when communism finished, there was a restitution. There was a restitution, and there is a Jewish kindergarten and a Jewish primary school. And I think also, I am not sure if Jewish high school, yes, but definitely kindergarten and primary school.
Got it. And probably one of our last questions for this evening, because we're just about rounding out our time frame. Patricia was curious to know a little bit more about any of the synagogues that might have become churches, or vice versa, if there were any churches that became synagogues. Is that a history there in Prague, or?
There is. Well, in Prague, synagogues, many Jewish people perished during Holocaust, and synagogues became empty. Synagogues which didn't have any use for the communist regime, communists used synagogues and some churches, they turned into warehouses, storages for something even agricultural, some farms, or they behaved terribly to culture heritage. And in 1960s, if synagogue didn't have such a purpose for the communists, they decided to demolish it. So many synagogues were demolished by communists in 1960s. Synagogues which survived after 1989, they are being restored. Still, that's a long, really, process, and still there are synagogues in terrible shape, and it's a question of money, and they are turning into culture centers and historical meeting rooms, and there are lectures there, and talking about Jewish community in that particularly little town. So we are now learning, in fact, when communism finished, we are learning all, in fact, Czechs are learning about history of their Jewish neighbors.
Wow, that's really, that is actually quite inspiring. And I think on the last note, can you speak a little bit about kosher food options? I do know there was some before.
Oh yes, there is we passed it, but probably I didn't show it, that there is a King David just opposite Pinka Synagogue. That's a kosher restaurant, and other kosher restaurants are in the neighborhood of all new synagogues. So there are 2 or 3 kosher restaurants in Jewish Quarter.
Great, wonderful. Well, I cannot thank you enough. Before I pass it back to Candice, I just want to say a quick thank you to Mariano, who's with us at Jewish Mallorca. And Mariano, if you don't mind to share our feedback form, we would love to know from everyone, what they thought of this virtual experience. To speak about Lucy as well as our wonderful tour guide would be also very helpful as well. We'll put the link in the chat, and we can show you on the screen and perhaps a little bit later. But for now, we just want to say a huge, huge, huge toda rabah. Thank you so much, Lucy. And we'll give.
Thank you so much.
We'll pass the microphone back to Candice.
Thank you so much, Danny. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. My name is Candice, and I am head of events at Maccabi GB. Lucy, on behalf of everyone here this morning, on behalf of everyone at Maccabi GB, thank you so much. That was incredible.
Thank you so much.
I definitely think Prague is on my to-do list now. I've never been, and I will definitely be coming. So thank you so much.
Perfect.
I have seen lots of comments come in from everybody saying how interesting it was. So thank you. And I'm really pleased the sun's shining there. So please send the sunshine to the UK for us. To Danny and Mariano, thank you so much for all of your help in organising this morning. You've been wonderful to work with. Thank you. And a big thank you to all of you for joining us this morning as well, giving up an hour on a Sunday morning, and to those of you that made donations as well. It is hugely appreciated, so thank you so much. We will, of course, let you know of any future walking tours coming up, but just to highlight, on the 29th of August, Maccabi GB will be back in person with our Maccabi GB Community Fun Run. It's the largest event in the Jewish calendar, so please do come with your grandchildren, children, the family. It's a whole day out, and we will put all of the details in the post-event email that will be sent out later today. So thank you everyone once again. Lovely to see you all here this morning, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thank you so much, and great day. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
And come to Prague.
Yes, yes.
Bye-bye. Thank you. No, it's so this.
Thank you, Lucy. Wonderful job, as always.
Thank you.
Unbelievable. So fascinating.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you all.
Enjoy the rest of the day, Lucy.
You too. Thanks.